Good morning, everybody. I'm going to just do like a little quick, maybe one or two rollout videos, so I post these right away. I'm going to teach in a little while at my daughter's, and actually I had a lot to do today. And I thought, oh, I don't have to work on a teaching video, but as I was worshiping and listening to the Christian music, they very rarely break into that with breaking news. And I check the news every morning on the computer, all local and world news. But they broke in on the music and said a tragedy happened in San Antonio today. I guess it just happened last night, this morning. But they found a truck in a Walmart parking lot in San Antonio, a smuggler of illegal aliens. And they found that we've had tragedies like this before, but they were in that Walmart, or in that truck in a Walmart parking lot in San Antonio, where you see me make videos every now and then. 8 people are dead, and the other, I guess 32, were taken to the hospital. So this will be national news today. Texas will be national news. I also figured I'll talk a little because as I teach this afternoon at my daughter Bethany's, I was also going to include a couple of chapters, but maybe I'll just talk about them now. And one more comment about our area. Texas, Corpus Christi. We made it to national news again. I read a report or something in the Corpus paper a few weeks ago that we were ranked one of the best run cities like in the nation. Okay, about a month or so ago, we made it to the national news because we had a judge. Her name is Burkett. I have nothing against Miss Burkett, and she was an immigrant and graduated from law school. Well, we made it to news because Miss Burkett was not a U.S. citizen. So there were national news sites criticizing how poorly Corpus Christi is run. Meaning, all of the rulings, she is a municipal judge in Corpus Christi. Her husband is a lawyer. And she was not a U.S. citizen, which is a requirement by law. So they kind of suspended her. Look, that job brings in, I think, $100,000 or something a year. There's other people that were qualified that were passed up for this position to be a municipal judge in Nueces County. Well, they suspended her, and the new council and Carolyn Vaughn and others, Lucy Rubio, there were 2 council members that did not vote to reinstate her. But the other council members and the mayor, they said, okay, as soon as you get your citizenship, we will reinstate you. So she applied for her citizenship, Miss Burkett, and she was happy. Well, the Kohler Times has kind of advocated for her. Look, if you're going to advocate for immigrants, I advocate for immigrants. But this is a little different. And they advocated that she should get her job back. And, okay, I understand. Well, then they did reinstate her. And then the Kohler Times reported, but she can't actually take her job back until the middle of next month, which is August, because she just also applied in the beginning of July 10th or something. She had to apply to vote. She was also not registered to vote, which is another qualification for the judges here. So it's going to take like until August. To me, nothing against Miss Burkett. But if you cannot find, there are many judges that would have liked to have that position because it's $100,000 a year. Now, those municipal judges are the same ones. My friend Don with the pier, he wanted me to go to court with him he's trying to get an extension because they now have all of these code enforcement against Don and all of these things. And I told Don through a mutual friend, I said, I would never be in a court of a judge here saying, well, we have all this against somebody, Don, and all these violations. I said, it's a disgrace what they're doing here. Now, I want you to understand that the city should have simply said, Ms. Burkett, in the future, when you want to reapply, after you get your qualifications, you now are a citizen, now you got to register to vote, and because it's ridiculous, because it's received national criticism. And I bring that up to say there's still problems in this city. The natural city of man has got a lot of problems here. Now, I'm going to upload this real quick. We're going to pray, and we do pray, and I already did, for the victims in the San Antonio, Texas, Walmart parking lot who died in that truck because it was a transporting of illegal aliens. Psalms 48, read it the other day. I quote the beginning of it in my prayer time. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, in the mountain of his holiness. Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion on the sides of the north. So this is the city of God, the city of the great King. But then as I read it, that's normally what I quote in prayer a few times a week in intercession. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. Now listen, look at this part. That's Psalms 48. For lo, the kings were assembled, they passed by together. They saw it. The leaders, rulers, governments, they saw it, and so they marveled. They were in fear. They were troubled and hasted away. Fear took hold upon them there, and pain as of a woman in travail. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. The few more verses past the part I quote. It says, the rulership and the leaders of the earth, they saw God in his people, and they feared. They saw God in his people, and they feared. All that we see, all that's going on politically, after I made that video with I made a video with my daughter Becky and Lulu at the ranch the other day, which will go up in a few days, Acts 17. But then after I shut the video off, I said, we're so consumed right now in this nation. And I explained to Becky, I said, we're mad because there's possible Russian collusion, and did they talk, and how dare any other, even though Ukraine, which was a breakaway of Russia, I explained this to my daughter, the Ukrainian government shared information with the Democrats, actually did it, and the Democrats openly colluded with Ukraine. Okay, some will argue, I heard Charles Krauthammer argue this on Fox News. I said, well, but Ukraine is, look, they're fascist. Ukraine, Russia is fighting in Ukraine on the border, okay? Backing up Russian nationals against the youth. But they said, well, yeah, it was okay that, so you had a foreign government, Ukraine, openly collude with the DNC. But that's okay. But we are so upset. And then I told my daughter, I said, we had a war. It's called the Iraq War. Some estimates are between 200,000 and 500,000 people died. Okay? Some estimates were that big. And that entire war was based on false intelligence that the United States and Britain had. This was false intelligence. Others who wanted us to go to war had false enemies of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They produced it. And we were so sure. We had Colin Powell go before the UN and make the case. We are so sure that we had a war, an unjust and illegal war, based on false intelligence. And I told my daughter Rebecca, I said, and after that war, George Bush's war, we then acknowledged that they actually didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And it was false intelligence. So we started an entire war, hundreds of thousands of people killed, because we used false intelligence. Not just to collude with getting rid of a leader, like working together with another country no, we killed and murdered. But we're kind of, Mosul in Iraq was just, quote, liberated. There was some intelligence that came out of Mosul. Mosul is a city in Iraq. President Obama was also to blame for this because they began a new liberation of the city of Mosul with U.S. troops, meaning ISIS took Mosul. It was a stronghold in Iraq, like other places in Raqqa and other areas. So the U.S. said, we're going to liberate it. So now we've been having a bombing raid in Mosul for months now. And that place is absolutely destroyed. And I think it was a Turkish general, but they said it's possible that 40,000 civilians were killed in the last 6 months in this whole Mosul thing. Many by us. Many. They said because the estimates that came out are much lower. It says, but that doesn't account for all the people that are buried in the rubble. And we did that to defend, to back up the Iraqi forces who are now persecuting some of the innocent people that were in Mosul because of a religious division. And we had our hands in that. And how many are concerned today? How many kings of the earth and rulers, we are so upset in this nation. And there is injustices going on that we have committed based on false intelligence. And I explained it to my daughter. She didn't know. I said, yes, the entire war in Iraq by George Bush II and the deaths of children and people was an unjustified thing based on false intelligence that we had. But yet we're mad that maybe another country might have tried to give, even though they did it with the Democrats openly, publicly. I heard a former New York Times reporter actually say that Trump might actually have to be tried for treason and be executed. This was a former person who wrote for the New York Times. She doesn't write for the Times anymore. So you'd think actually we might have to execute the president. That was her tweet. He might have to be tried for treason, maybe his family, and maybe they will have to receive the death penalty for treason. For something that others did, I just told you. And now that they got to pass on that. Do you know, Trump just they just advised Trump and his people, Robert Mueller, the investigator, don't destroy any records. Now, can you imagine if Trump handed over all of the records and said, yeah, but I destroyed 30,000 emails. I wiped the server. Oh, he would be impeached. Hillary. Her collusion with Russia was a crime which she did when she was Secretary of State, approving particular deals with Russians. And then her husband getting these. And Chelsea Clinton herself, emails came out where she said, Dad and his friends are using our nonprofit, which they did have a nonprofit. They're using it as, Chelsea herself said what they're doing is illegal, meaning all of the connections they had. Those were serious things, and even books were written on that. So what we have in this country is a tremendous game. Tremendous game. I don't justify any. It's not against the law. If another country shared information against a political opponent, because the Democrats did that. And that's openly known. Information that the Ukrainians gave the Democrats, that the Democrats used. A lot of these illegal leaks that took place with the same thing. The famous Russian dossier. It was a fake thing about Trump, that he slept in a hotel where Obama slept. He had prostitutes and they peed all over the bed and stuff, which was fake. That actually was one of the fake things that came out. But it was shared secretly, and James Comey himself advised Trump, we think we have something and we got to tell you about it. And it was fake. And the papers reported that as true. They leaked that. People from inside leaked that, which are all crimes. I say that to say this. Those that think that, what about the local issue? Every case that Miss Burkett ruled on before the court, before the municipal court, every one of them should be thrown out. And there was an opinion made in the paper where they said, well, even though she was not a U.S. citizen, everything she judged on we're going to let stand. You should have a class action suit for every single fine, every single violation that Miss Burkett ruled on. There should be a class action suit that she was not qualified to be a judge. And that would win. And then you pull my friends before the court, the same type of system, municipal court, code enforcement, and you look at them and say to them, well, we might go easy on you. And you yourselves have people that are not even citizens making judgments. You should have done what was right. The right thing should have been, basically, Miss Burkett has a good story, and we want to advocate for immigrants. But it's a disgrace that this has happened in this way, because the national media said in Corpus Christi, Texas, you have people making judgments, judges who are not even citizens. And now she's just wasn't even a registered voter because she wasn't a citizen. Now they got to wait. Now I'll go quick on this because I really just wanted to mention the tragedy that just happened this morning in San Antonio. But look at that song. It says, the kings of the earth, the rulers of the earth, they saw that really authority and judgment was resting within the church. They saw this God's city, his people, and they feared. They feared. Righteous judgment is with the church. It's with the church. When you let a society get to a point where all types of things are done based on we've made decisions. We've carried out, we feel like if we in this country, the justifications for all the other wars going into Syria was simply what we gave George W. Bush, which you can go after terrorists anywhere that you ever see them, and that was a justification for Syria and other places, whether they were part of the original group or not, Al-Qaeda. But yet other countries don't honor that. That was something that we did in this country. So a lot of this is violations of international law. You say, well, then how do we get away with it? Because we say, well, don't you know we can go in? We can have a war with you. That's how we get away with certain things. Don't ever justify all the things we do in this country. This city, San Antonio, it's just a sign. It's just a sign, okay? So this will be the first one I'll teach later, and I might comment on Isaiah 6 later. Because you have the same thing with the prophet Isaiah. Maybe I'll comment on it now. That way I'll have the Psalm 48 and Isaiah 6 done. Isaiah, the great calling of Isaiah in chapter 6. He says, in the year that King Uzziah died, judgment and rulership, I saw the Lord, high and lifted up. And then Isaiah sees this great, there are the two seraphim, angels with 6 wings over the throne of God, which is sort of a type and a picture of the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant with the angels over the throne of God. There's a scripture that says, hear my prayers when I lift up my hands towards your holy oracle. Hear my prayers when I lift up my hands towards your holy oracle. And then Isaiah sees this great vision of God and God's holiness. And he says, I'm a man of unclean lips in the midst of an unclean people. And then one of those angels takes a live coal and puts it on his lips. It says, your iniquity is purged. Now you're going to speak. You're going to speak judgment, basically. It says you're going to prophesy, Isaiah, against all this wickedness within government and society around you. Because that's what the people of God, they had their government in the Old Testament. And Isaiah says, how long? It says, speak to these people till their ears get dull of hearing, which was a fulfillment of the parables of Jesus in the New Testament. It says, because Isaiah prophesied that these people would have eyes and not see and ears would not hear. Therefore, he spoke to them in parables and mysteries, because they were not privileged to see the mysteries of the kingdom. So this is a judgment prophecy. It says, now Isaiah, I want you to go speak. Speak my word to the people. He said, how long? He said, until the cities are waste, until judgment comes, till people flee. But then after all this judgment, there will be a tenth, a tithe of the people, the remnant. A tenth will return. And there'll be the food. It's interesting. Read the end of that chapter, preachers. Isaiah 6. There'll be the food. If you don't see this video today, because I'm almost making it a regular teaching video and I'm covering these 2 chapters, you might see it then like in a week from today. But the news, you'll get it already. You'll see the news. It's on the, I didn't even look at it yet. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train, the train of the robe filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims, which had 6 wings. 2 covered their face, 2 covered their feet, and with 2 they did fly. Messengers who received no glory. Their faces covered, their feet are covered. Jesus says in John 3, as the wind blows where it is, and you don't know where it's coming from, where it's going, so is everyone that is born in the Spirit. Feet covered, you don't know where they are. Eyes covered. My servant, the scripture I taught the other day, who's blind like my servant, but yet they're hearing, they're speaking. Messengers, okay? And one cried unto another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the whole earth is full of his glory. And the posts of the door moved at the voice of him that cried. The house was filled with smoke. And then he said, I'm undone. And one of the seraphims flew unto him, having a live coal, taken with the tongs from off the altar, laid it upon, which I told you, his mouth. And I heard the voice of the Lord, who will go for us? And he said, here I am, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and their ears heavy. And shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert. And then said I, Lord, how long? Isaiah is asking God, how long is this prophecy of judgment going to go for? Until the cities be wasted without inhabitant, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate. And the Lord have removed men far away, and there's a great forsaking in the midst of the land. But yet in it, I like the last verse, shall be a tenth people, and shall return, and shall be eaten. The fruit of the earth, as a tale tree and as an oak whose substance is in them, when they cast their leaves. Jesus shall be eaten. We're the body of Christ. Jesus sat with his men and said, take, eat. This is my body. We are sustenance for the nations, okay? This will be a teaching video. You get it in a week. I had to finish those 2 chapters, or I wanted to comment on them. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. In this city of our God, in this mountain of his holiness, beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth, is Mount Zion on the sides of the north, the city of the great King. God is known in her palaces for a refuge. And the kings, the leaders, rulers, They saw, they marveled, and they were afraid. Because God is ruling in the church, in the people of God. When thy judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world will learn righteousness. Arise, O God, and judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. Okay? God is ruling in the earth. We'll end it right there.